Our next speaker is an experienced team leader with technical background, and he has been coaching teams and for a long time already.
Yes, but wasn't coaching, but working.
Working as a team coach is even better, I guess. Oh. Okay, so give a round of applause to Andrej.
So, hello everybody. Talking after lunch is the best time, I think, because people who don't like the presentation, they just sleep. So it's okay. So basically what I wanted to present is my experiment that I was doing in a company, and I will share the results with that experiment. A bit about me. So this experiment was happening in the company Adform. I was wearing different hats there. I was hired as a developer, then my roles changed as a Scrum Master, Product Owner, and different other roles. And I sometimes share my thoughts and ideas on Twitter and my website. So basically what this experiment was about is how we could organize work and how exactly to do that. And I'm looking at this problem or challenge is actually choosing a tool. So you can do it in multiple ways. Some ways are some better, some ways better fits different contexts and so on. So while talking about the tools, it's important to understand, okay, first of all, in which context you are going to apply that tool and what is the surrounding. So in my case, it was like in Adform case, first of all, it's area we operate in is a pretty competitive market, and we have really lots of players, both local and global, like Google, Yahoo, and others, who serve different sides of the stakeholders. Another thing that, even though the market is big, like publishers, media agencies, like creative agencies, and others, we selected a path of building a product which is kind of full stack and covers and provides offering for all the players on the market. So both for the publisher side, for data management, and so on, which means that we are kind of really scattered in our offering as in general. Then another thing, like our context is we, through all the years, grew really fast. Like when I joined company, it was like 35 people, and after 8 years, I think when like this number, and in the product development that I was responsible at that time in that role was around 300 people. So it's pretty kind of big number of teams to operate with and find a way how to work. And also what we also had, at least I had as a perception and desire, is to keep the culture that we had when we were 35, to keep it when we were growing further and do like that. Okay, so the context is clear. So now let's take a look at this kind of management or way how to organize work also from the historical perspective. I borrowed this from one guy that I will mention, like called Niels Flagging, which I like the ideas of his, but let's go further. So basically the management, and at least how we understand it and how we educate it, began with a guy called Taylor, who at this year, he just created or designed the so-called scientific management. So he defined the approach, how we should organize work and work with people and define all the things. Actually, his definitions were pretty much kind of obvious and simple to understand. And they really create a big change at that time and increased the efficiency a lot. Because the Taylor himself was, at least what I was reading about him, that he was really into efficiency and making work much better as he was working as an engineer. So he created that. But the result of his creation was like a couple of things were emerged from that. So one thing that he really separated thinking and doing, because he defined such roles as managers who specify the things, the rules and instructions on how other guys should operate. he also had this perception, at least what he observed in his environment while being at the factory, that kind of people doing the stuff were pretty dumb. That's why they have to be provided instructions on how to operate, because they cannot figure out themselves. And also he was a strong believer of one thing, that everything can be planned into a detail and operate in this way, like to the end. So this was his assumptions, and he invented the method based on these assumptions. Basically, what it led to a well-known thing, how we see things, because the projects are run in that way, companies are run in that way, that there are managers who basically control the strategy, budgets, and all the thing, and there are executors. So it's pretty clear separation in how things should go. But and as I mentioned, it was a really successful method and great revolution, and that's why it was adopted pretty well, kind of, as I understand. But if to take a look again at the context when it was applied, at least how I understand that context, maybe it's completely wrong. So the thing is that level of information, level of education of people who joined the factories, they were taking from, I don't know, fields, and they never did that kind of work, and they had to be educated and so on. Plus the competition was completely different at that time, and this led to kind of success. But actually all these factors, if to take a look at the 2016, like now, they kind of changed, and they are really, really different. And also, then I started kind of to read about other guys who had some different opinions, even at that time, how things should be run. For example, this Peter Drucker, he was talking a lot about managing by objectives and defining objectives. Actually, Google now, I think, applies this in the form of OKRs, like objective defined key results. So it's very kind of reflected to that. Then there was another guy, as Taylor believed that people are kind of dumb and require guidance and definition what to do. He was saying that no, vice versa, like people actually, if they put in the right environment, they will do the rest of the work, and you don't need to work with them too much. Then Deming, he was in general I think one of the fathers, at least is how I understand things, of system thinking, and he was very much focused into systems and how to define systems, how to manage the environments, because he believed that only defining the system will lead to people operate in the best way, and it's not the people's fault. Another guy, after whom we know Lean, he was also focused a lot on eliminating waste of any system which is all working and operating. And again, he was focused on the system. So another thing that I was inspired about is this, or by whom, not about, by him. He talks about organizing for complexity, and actually he started to evaluate all these thoughts. And he presented, one of his first work was beyond budgeting, like how to not to plan ahead and still work from the financial world. So very interesting works also. And another guy, Taleb, who actually questions a lot this rationale of kind of very strict planning, and that there are any system that is planned or tried to be planned extremely well, it has hidden risks that can have huge impact on the whole kind of system, and you should try to avoid kind of planning too much. Also very interesting works. He has a couple of books like Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, Fooled by Randomness, which are very kind of, at least for me, were inspiring to find the method. And what I observed after reading all these works of all these guys, so they were never focused comparing to Taylor, or they were never focused about kind of people themselves. They were more thinking about, okay, what the system should like, what is the surrounding should be for people to operate in the best way. And then I kind of had a question in my head, okay, so if it's like that, does previous kind of methods, or let's say conventional methods, are they really best on in organizing work, especially that you can read lots of studies that kind of projects are late, like 60% of projects are only successful or maybe less and so on, that actually those methods are not kind of perfect, but we still kind of fix to them. So I just decided, okay, let's take a look at the project. They typically were organized in that way, that there is a project manager who thinks about everything. There is a pretty siloed functions running the projects like analysts, QA, and they normally operate through some contracts like documents being passed through. At least I participated in that project. And at least I wasn't participating in successful ones. So then kind of Scrum came to the rescue, and at least from my experience, it worked best in a way that even though the project might be late in the similar way, but at least people felt much better working in that way. And they felt much better for a simple reason that, first of all, they had multifunctional teams. They were focused around the value, and they really were responsible for what they were kind of doing, and they were striving to achieve that. That's why kind of this method, at least, preferred by me. And then I started to think further. Okay, so we have pretty clear distinction between how we can run projects. So let's talk about the organization itself, like how it can look. So typically, in a typical organizational chart, you will never find clients. So it can be a thinking that, okay, so does it mean that the organization exists for itself? So it's one thing. Another thing that when the organization grows, I participated in a couple of situations when it really grows from smaller to bigger. Actually, the authority and decision making kind of goes up, but real work is still being done somewhere kind of beneath. And it leads to a situation that things are really become slower because the decision making and authority is being slightly taken away by lots of additional layers, which is also a problem. Then also typically, if it's a very functional, like functionally siloed organization, you can also notice that each function will start to optimize itself. Like IT department will optimize costs, quality department, if you have such, will start to optimize number of bugs. Project management department will start to optimize processes. Developers will start to optimize something else. So, and then most probably we'll have committees to optimize the whole, kind of. Another thing that when you have lots of silos, then it's very, of course it's normal, then how to say, if the value is delivered by a composition of those little blocks, then of course you need to have kind of a project manager or some manager who will be managing those little blocks, and in this way we have this matrix kind of structure. So then I thought, okay, but let's try to find an alternative and apply it at least at some level and try to work in a different way. After knowing all this information, then it becomes difficult to keep applying the conventional method, let's call it like that. So I just started to dig further with all the guys that I presented before. Okay, what could be an alternative way? And I thought about the network organization, like, and started to read more what this is all about and how it could work. And after 2 years maybe of thinking and making little experiments, we with guys in the company came up with such term, like term it doesn't matter actually here, but we call it POT. But what it stands for, is basically the multifunctional department, if you want, or the multifunctional cell, which has very clear boundaries. It has all the needed expertise inside to deliver like 95% of the value or 90% of the value, so they can actually do all the things. They can make decisions, and they're kind of responsible for everything. So that was the high-level principles of to organize that. What's important is that each of this kind of cell, I like this word maybe more, that they have two leaders, who one drives the direction, another drives how this direction is executed. I also learned that this analogy of CEO and CTO kind of perceived to understood somehow easier. And of course, they collaborate inside. They're really transparent about the results they deliver, like they have KPIs across the company that can be compared with others, whether it will be money or some other metrics. They always know, like they must always define the real value. It's either service or framework or I don't know, coaching, if you want, to be delivered to the rest of the company or outside the company. And having these principles in mind and tried to apply them, we just learned that there are at least could be several types or categories of those cells and units. So ones we call like product pods, who are closer. If to talk about the analogy of Niels, then he uses as a periphery. So they are closer to the market. So why we group them into the product pod? It's for a reason that kind of they work closer to the clients. So to make them multifunctional, they have a client support function inside. They maybe have some business developers inside who can really work closer to a market, and they kind of grouped into a single department and working in that way. And of course, they are kind of more, like one of their KPIs is typically money, because they are very much business oriented and they need to deliver money. Then another kind of category more like platform pod or platform cell. It's again the multifunctional team, but they're categorized in a way that they must define a service, for example, as a API middleware. It's kind of the bunch of infrastructure and tools and other things, guidelines, documentation needed that enables others to deliver APIs in the company and deliver it to the clients or to other kind of pods operating and so on. So typically we call platform kind of cells or pods like for those tasks which are really difficult to implement, but we still want to build them in a way that it's a service that you can start using. As an example, if you're kind of somewhat technical, you know you can use such tool as a Logly or some monitoring tools in the internet where you just subscribe, enter the credit card and so on, and you start kind of just logging all the things you want or provide monitoring criteria you want. So with the same logic, the monitoring team, it doesn't mean that there must be a team who will do something for the developers or for the business teams, but they will provide the service that those guys can operate easily and exchange them if they want with something external, if it's more efficient or it's cheaper or it's better in some other ways. And another thing is kind of cluster or category of other pods, which are less related to the product delivery, but more related to services that needed for the, or more like governance that are needed for the company to operate. Because still there are things that might be common or might be useful, like HR and so on, who can help you to operate with the things that are supporting, but not the most important, as it would be kind of HR department or something else like working in a typical company. And one of the most challenging principles, which actually failed, I would say, that normally these departments in conventional structure, they have the most control. Like HR department in any company, bigger company, they are the most important because they control budgets, they control hiring and so on. And for them, like to become service provider rather than controller is very difficult. So, and it was the biggest challenge maybe to address or start talking about that. So my learnings and findings, yeah, maybe I'm too fast, but it's okay. So my learnings and findings about the thing, what I think like this way of organizing work brings, and what questions kind of appeared that I wasn't able to find answers yet, but I really believe that it's easy to find this out. So let's go. So one of the things that we really managed to make, and it was extremely valuable, we till even now, when after we started to shift more to a conventional approach, we have a really clear value map of our products and teams grouped, and we can easily identify to see who is doing what and how the money are being earned in the company. So you can navigate to the IT services. Another thing, like when we started to build this value map with these cells, it became very clear that we missing lots of platform pods or things that were kind of responsibility was scattered among different functions. So it led to a very good situation from my point of view. We started to have more these platform cells which deliver value for the internal developers or companies or other guys. So it was, and actually they're also faster to notice, because when those cells, they have to deliver value and they lack some of the things, or they observe some dependencies, they raise this topic very much because they're responsible for the end result, and they have to kind of demand for the things, and the money and budget has to be shifted to make sure that necessary service appears on the map of the company. Or you can buy it somewhere else, like Amazon or something else. For example, as another example in our company, that when we needed servers, but we were not able to provide that, we gave possibility for our teams to, with some limited budget, but pretty high, they could run on Amazon before actual service could be kind of delivered to the company. And of course we saw that, okay, we spend too much on Amazon, and there is an economical need to create a company or to have more resources to deliver service and with a more efficient way. Another thing, like, so here is, I think, success, here is success, and here is like thoughts. What I learned, so it's really important. I was reading that in books, but I somehow didn't realize that. But you really need to hire slow, and you really need to resist to CEO if he's pushed to hire more headcounts or something else. Because the reason to hire slow is you need to hire for a mindset, especially if you hire a manager, because he will bring you a different mindset. And also you need to fire really fast, because if that person doesn't fit to your way of thinking, you should really resist them. And another important thing is really hire better than you. Like each new hire must be better than your another best hire, and only in this way you can work, I think, much better. Another thing, this structure, as it's, how to say, dynamic and applies to changes, it really must have a foundation of strong technical excellence, which we started to invest much more now into this, but it was kind of a bit late decision, let's call it like that, or a bit late we started to spend more effort. But APIs and hard decomposition, like by microservices, is extremely important to ensure the flexibility of organizational structure. Because normally, by this Conley law and other things, kind of the structure of the company replicates your architecture, how to say. So that's why if you're going to build technically things separated instantly, it will allow you to, when you need, to adjust the organizational structure. At least it was in our case. And of course, automation, what I call chaos monkey, it's like you always need to challenge your infrastructure. It must be always under stress. I think these ideas emerged more from Taleb, that any system must be under stress. Only then you understand the real situation of the system. Because if you only plan that it has failover, and you never test it each day, then at a very important day of yours, it will fail. I experienced this gazillion of times. Another thing that I failed kind of to bring to understanding, that conventional structure is designed for permanent state, because it consists of functions, like HR, it doesn't change. development doesn't change, IT doesn't change, quality doesn't change. So then you always have those departments. And network structure, as it's built around the value, it kind of, the structure itself is changing, because one day, at least in our company, you might build one offerings and make money on that, and on another day you might build kind of other offerings and make money on other things. So it really kind of living structure that has to be and that adjusts towards the business needs. So it was a failure because everybody understands or perceives that structure is something solid and forever. Another thing which semi-success, transparency. It's maybe the most scary thing for the company owners and so on, like when to start sharing the information and because somehow I cannot even explain this, but people really afraid of even share the progress of your pod or cell or unit, because I think they're afraid to be evaluated. But when those who started and those who applied that, they really had very much improved decision making, because they had all the information and the full picture to operate and and make the best decision for that context. But it really depends on the leaders, and if they kind of convinced that it's not scary to start sharing information about the budget, the things, the plans you want to hire, the risks you have, and so on, to a team, inside the team, and to other teams, then, or the cells, then it's really kind of a big game changer. But like how to build this into a system, I didn't find a way. Another thing, like when having these cells and defining boundaries and defining the value being delivered, actually increases like significantly the level of the ownership and the level of responsibility. And you can really see that from the behavior, how people operate. And especially when we have in our company the situation that we don't have any support department, and the team itself has to support everything they did, all the crap. So, and when they get all this, they really, how to say, they have to find solutions that that will prevent them waking up at nights and do something else. But it even started earlier when we started to apply SCRUM with Vaidas and Alexei. So another thing, the collaboration. This is actually, I underestimated a lot. And I don't think it depends on the way you organize, but collaboration didn't work smoothly. My expectation was that when teams are provided the transparent information about how other cells operate and what are the needs and the dependencies, they, using this information, will seek how to cooperate. Especially that all our offerings, they're really interdependent, and they have to kind of, the sum of values is much bigger than someone else, some specific offering delivers something. So it's much better to integrate and have a mutually dependent feature which will bring value for both offerings. And it didn't work. And also I think it didn't work that we had some of the cells that had teams in different countries, like Belarus, Poland, and Lithuania. And it also somehow didn't work, and I think that maybe it's better to have the cell inside one location rather than try to split it among different ones, because this maybe and distance and other things, they just really prevent of collaborating. So it's also this topic that has to be addressed. Guidance of change. Well, it's my immaturity, I would say, but I expected that defining those principles that I presented and talking them through will actually help to grasp, and people will find some of the ways. But what could be done better in this way, that we, like after that later, we defined minimum set of artifacts like roadmap, KPIs, high-level architecture, and other things for each cell to be presented, but we didn't control the way. And after we presented those artifacts, it's actually, and it was mapped to principles, why this information is needed and so on, and it helped more to operate, but I still was avoiding to control every detail of how each cell is going to present the roadmap. The most important thing that it is present and others can find it and see and work with that. So it's another thing. Then do it everywhere. I think with each change, either you apply Scrum in the company and so on. Like what we started from the product teams and business teams, but those service teams and platform teams became a bottleneck. And actually, if I would be doing it one more time, I would actually start from the service teams and platform teams, because they are foundation for the business teams to operate. And in this way, there would be less stress to those guys who work on the core components that are used for others. Another thing, it's a very interesting one, like I already mentioned it a bit, that actually it would be interesting to make a study or test it somehow, because I don't believe in this, but people believe in this standardization of practices and approaches in each cell, which from my point of view doesn't make sense when you know what value they actually deliver, to whom they deliver, what their dependencies and how they operate. If you know that, then basically you don't need to know the internals, and there is no need to control the internals, but you can create a service provider or coaching function or like service in the organization who will help those guys who have the need to guide them to the best possible practice or something like that. But there is always a temptation to make everything super standard. I don't know why. I mean, no explanation for that. Another thing that I didn't test, but it's kind of one of the last assumptions that I have, that typically, if you remember all your way how you operate in a group, typically you apply these 5 methods, yes? Like presentation, maybe brainstorming, some status reports and so on. But I think that in order to work in a network organization, now I'm reading about liberating structures, actually a very interesting thing, and it can be applied actually in any type of organization, because it's more talking about the way how to work in a group. That because these methods do not involve people into decision making and sharing the information, and methods described here, like trees, for example, it's the work in a group where you define what can go wrong, like what we can do to make things even worse. Like these 15% solutions that can be used in the cell, like how to start delivering value earlier. So there are a set of much better tools, it seems to be. I will try to apply them, that can work, I think, better in a network organization especially. So is it a myth? Well, experiment is over. I think that it's not, and it can be done because the benefits are obvious. There are open questions that have to be kind of thought through, answered, and so on. And of course, the support from the kind of stakeholders of the company is needed. But it's like, at least how I understand the value, it's really worth to try and find a way how network organization could be implemented in your company. So, and if you are interested in alternative ways of how work can be organized in the company, I really suggest you to go to these links and read more. Thank you. Which roles? You need CEO. Yes, because he will start selling the idea. He will maybe start with the mock-ups or whatever, or selling this problem or challenge or new offering to more people, then he will be given more people, and then you will start applying. If the team grows, you will get +1 developer or whatever. So you it's a very natural process. But first you need to make a value proposition basically inside the company for all the stakeholders to whom you believe there is a problem. So one person is needed. Yes.
Yes. Wanted to ask regarding the pods and how they, for example, react for a change. If, for example, if it was a long experiment, if, for example, the need changes, and for example, there's no need for such function or such, I don't know, pod. It's a pod that kind of changes, or people migrate into another pods, or
we had one case. Then we had one of the. Well, it's related to a question. One of the problems, for example, we were working, and one of the guys realized that we need to address mobile advertising area better. And he started to sell that, and he was giving more people because we believed, okay, yes, of course, there are more smartphones and all the crap is bringing to the market, and more budgets are going there. And we decided that we're going to be kind of mobile first, and we're going to sell that. And we tried for a year and a half, and then we realized actually that person who started that, he realized that we're not going to be mobile first, and it's more a feature of other products rather than a product. And he said, let's disassemble that. But when when you are really understanding or thinking about the value, if you see that it's not valuable, you stop doing that. It's very easy.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? We still have some time.
I said I was going to be fast.
Yeah, great. I love your time management skills, indeed. And Andrej is not going to be here till the evening, so use your chance to ask whatever you would like to.
How many pods do you have?
I think 17.
The question was how many pods do they have?
Yeah, I think 17 plus or something like that. They're grouped in more areas. Like we have 6 or 7 areas, and each of them contains more. So 17 plus, something like that. I can't remember exactly.
So that means all organizations organized in these now?
No, only part of the client support, product people, and development and IT. Only these guys. Other functions, as I was saying, the service guys, for them to give out control, not possible. Too scary.
You said that collaboration doesn't work very well between pods. Do you have some insights how to do it better in the future?
I'm thinking, actually I don't understand why it didn't work. Because my firm belief was that kind of when I know what I'm delivering, I know like what I need, or if I'm lacking something from a partner here. And if I know that collaborating with him will increase my value, I don't know why it didn't work. But it led to a situation that we're now building portfolio management. Huh?
Something on pods? Pod of
Yes,
pods?
yes. But it's not part of my experiment, so I cannot comment on that.
Okay, anyone else? More questions? I'm a bit short-sighted, so if anyone's raising your hand, you can also shout out, you know.
And actually getting back to, like, that's why I'm fast sometimes, because normally I got used to... It doesn't work, just saying. I'm less used to this, so that's why I like do it fast, and then the discussion is the most interesting part, because most of the things we were doing with the CTOs running those cells, it was often like a full day collaborative kind of meetings where we discuss problems and so on. So it might look inefficient kind of in the short term, but it was very efficient in the long term, because the things remain kind of for longer. I will not answer his question.
Yeah, I have an internal, almost internal question. If you have service pods, they don't communicate with outside, and then they only communicate with teams within the company. Then the question is, teams that can communicate with outside, they have competition. Teams that communicate within, they usually don't. So the question is then, how do you ensure the quality of these pods, and how do you ensure that they're up to the standard?
Very simple. Maybe I didn't highlight that, but each cell is allowed, at least I was doing that, is allowed to use any external service. So you can, if my IT department doesn't deliver servers, then like it's okay to start using Amazon or start using, I don't know, Atea to do that. So that's the thing. Sometimes it's difficult to implement, but some of these alternatives we managed to implement. To build a competition, basically. Yes?
I have a simple question. So what roles people were doing before when they became CEOs of pods? It's just an interesting, what type of people became CEOs? Were they developers, were they product managers?
Actually different. Those who were closer to product, they were they were product owners or business analysts, there were those roles. But for the service, and actually it was another challenge to a bit educate and explain, it was a technical people for the service things, like API middleware, or now we're building a service that to allow developers to exchange data between producers and consumers. So there are developers with the skills of, or desire to build in skills of like building technical products. Yeah, yes, but they were coming like other, but this analogy is a bit, because when CEO, it's a company, yes, and it's separate from others, and that's why we moved from the CEO name to pod owner, because CEO kind of pushes for non-collaboration, and I think partially, by the way, this non-collaboration happened because I used the word CEO, and when CEO, you basically, fuck you, I'm the smartest person in the world, I'm doing this. So some people, of course, like the product, like then they started to call product directors. They came from other companies, from the competitors who know the market, but all externals mainly in product sales.